Hi, welcome, Hadley. I was just mentioning to folks that we were taking a few extra minutes because we had some folks just able to join us at 1 from a prior commitment. We have 8 of us on now, so we definitely have a quorum and we could begin. We are waiting on just, I think, on Franklin, and I can't recall if she had a prior commitment up until 1 p.m., but why don't we give her another minute and then we can get started unless somebody has an objection to that. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this, what I anticipate to be the last meeting of this calendar year of the committee. I see from the list, and I'll try to call a roll, and if anyone is here and I didn't get you, please shout it out. I see David, Hadley, Joel, Peter, Phil, Stephen, Vilda, and Bill. And that constitutes a quorum of the committee. Did I miss anyone? No, excellent. If we don't have any objections to beginning, I can go on to the next item of the agenda, which is requesting a motion to approve the minutes of the November 23rd meeting that were circulated. And I apologize for the typo on the agenda. It wasn't revised minutes. I think that was an artifact from the last agenda. These are just regular minutes, not yet revised.
I'd move that if you want.
Great, I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great. Anyone object to the approval of these minutes on this motion? Okay, hearing no objection, the minutes are approved. So we can move on to the discussion of the annual report, which is the next item on the agenda. And I propose, unless somebody has a different plan, to focus on areas where we've had changes over the last version. But if anyone shout it out if you've had some thoughts about a version that we aren't focusing on that you'd like to discuss. So the first changes that came in from the prior version were to section 2A around oversight, and we had a proposal to substitute that section with some modified language, and it's there. We should discuss. So most recently, we had an addition to the addition and then an alternative proposed to the addition to the addition. What do people like best? Are people comfortable with Joel's addition, change, and then addition to the change?
I thought Joel's change was a good one. One editing thing, although I defer to Stephen. I thought the word prior should be like above or something like that rather than prior.
I mean,
Right.
that's totally fine. And I'm with me, and I'm also fine with Stephen's change as well. That's totally fine with me.
So we're all in favor of Joel's addition with Stephen's modification?
I would be more comfortable, instead of the committee believes, to put something more in that the committee hopes that what is happening rather than we believe. It sounds too committed to me.
So we also hope that any such system?
instead of believes that this will,
Okay, so in this, not the first use of believe, but the second use. Okay. Everyone okay with hopes instead of believes? In the second use of the word?
Yeah, it's fine. I think that's what I was going for anyway.
Okay. Excellent. So unless we have another method, let's move on to 2B, where we had some minor sort of typographical style changes in the second paragraph. And some formatting changes. Somebody stop me. 2C. Just the change in the wording in that paragraph. All right. D1. Okay. And then the sort of more substantive change that was proposed in D2 was that we should not discuss the bill. We had a discussion of the bill that lasted a few paragraphs, and David had suggested that if we're not going to take a supporting position, that we should just omit that discussion. And then he modified and emphasized some language in the last paragraph. Anyone have a problem with those changes? Okay. So we, D3, I think we're on expanding entities that are subject to FOIL and OML. There was a clarifying reference put into the that first paragraph. Everyone okay with that? All right. Sorry, I'm flipping through, beg your pardon. Okay, the next change that we have is to Roman 3. There was just a question that I hoped I answered for Stephen. The transcription requirement only came into being initially in March of 2020 when the executive order was effective, and then was reinforced in the temporary law that's due to expire in January. But otherwise, meetings do not need to be transcribed.
Well, I was concerned about setting a double standard. In other words, if you have a requirement for one kind of meeting, why would you add more for other meetings?
I believe that the transcription requirement was meant to address the issue of people not hearing everything that was going on using remote access, so that it was designed, I believe, to ameliorate people's concerns that they weren't hearing every word, and that potentially a transcription would allow them, in connection with a video, to follow along better. I don't think that.
So shouldn't there be a transcription requirement for in-person meetings then?
Stephen, this is Kristen, I just want to throw out there that that's likely to be a pretty big expense, as opposed to the programs like this, like WebEx and Zoom and Facebook Live and YouTube. All of those, a lot of them have built-in transcription services. In order to have a transcript of a live meeting, you're likely going to have to hire a court reporter, and that's a big expense.
I just think that you set a high hurdle for WebEx meetings.
Well, I think many people agree with you, Stephen, that the transcription requirement did cause local governments and local smaller entities kind of a lot of stress in the beginning, when there was lack of clarity about whether this was required to be a professional transcription. I think everyone kind of came around to the view ultimately that these kind of automated transcription products, in conjunction with the video that's required by the same temporary law, would be adequate for purpose. I don't know what portion of that's going to survive into new version of whatever law is enacted in January.
Well, I wouldn't mind, and later an automated transcription if possible, or something like that. I just don't, I think that the language is ambiguous as to what kind of transcription is allowed.
It certainly is, and luckily it expires in January. So the order that initially proposed it expired in June. And then it was reinvigorated in September, I believe, in the chapter 417, and with a sort of a strict understanding that temporary law would be sort of repealed effective January 15th of 2022, so right around the corner, and the hope that there would be a replacement that was sort of a more considered response to the problems.
Well, we are at least aware of something that we could consider later on if it becomes a burden.
Absolutely. I mean, we've issued anecdotal advice. I mean, Kristen and the team and I have on this question, a lot of times for both attendees of meetings and holders of meetings, public bodies. Welcome, Franklin.
Not exactly, as long as we're talking about meetings and transcriptions. I've spent the last 15 minutes trying to get on. It only wanted me as, I spent a bit of time as an attendee, but you all didn't know I was there and I couldn't comment. So this WebEx really stinks.
Oh,
Can
sorry.
really stink.
I think
Other people have had trouble, I know, in meetings past. This is the first one I have, but it absolutely demanded passwords and everything else. So any event, I'm glad to finally be here.
Thanks. So just moving forward, moving on to, let's see, A3. This was the feedback section again. And Stephen had a question that he wanted everyone to sort of answer, I think, as part of the discussion. So, I mean, I certainly agree, Stephen, and I think that that was the subject of much conversation in the hearing that the assembly had on this in October. And I think it's what motivates entities that hold meetings in person to not have them in private homes, but rather in things like public libraries or town halls or things like that, where having strangers in your house around is more palatable.
What is the notion supporting the fact that somebody ought to be able to come into your home? I've never heard anyone in the media recommend that. So you obviously have been talking to different people in the media than I have.
Well, I think that this comes from the version of the law that will come back into effect in January, if nothing else is passed, that says that you must announce the location from where every member of a public body is participating if you are holding it with video conferencing. In other words, before we had meetings like this body met in 3 public locations: Buffalo, Albany, and New York City. And each of those locations was open to the public because we were operating by video conference. Many entities would hold their meetings in town halls and boardrooms and things where they would welcome the public, because again, even if they were participating, if there were members participating by video conference of those public bodies, each of those locations has always had to be open to the public. So the people didn't usually spend it in their living room like they did when the pandemic hit.
Well, shouldn't we object to a return to that circumstance?
Well, I don't know that the committee as a body would necessarily support closing public locations, or, I mean, there's never been a requirement that you have a meeting in a private home. The requirement is simply that you have a meeting that's open to the public wherever you have a member participating. I think that the sticky wicket has arisen because people were participating in meetings from their private homes for the first time ever during the
Well,
pandemic.
certainly the technical situation has evolved since the law was originally specified. And I
Sure.
think we could encourage an update of that.
Right. I think that
Stephen.
what we've heard from media is that they would object to people participating in public in these or attending open meetings, members of public bodies doing that from places where they cannot also be present.
Yes.
So the issue of private homes is not really the issue. The issue is a location open to everyone to come in and look their members in the eye.
Well,
Yeah,
I
Stephen,
certainly
I think
would be
the issue
open.
is, sorry, I think the issue is a bit more nuanced than you're giving it credit for, Steve. Stephen, you know, it depends on the type of the board, but certainly if you're talking about you know, a small town council or a school board, the idea that they could all be sitting at their home and be on Zoom and you can't actually like catch them in the hallway or talk to them at the meeting is a real impediment for a number of people and for reporters in particular. Particularly if, you know, you limit public access, you know, public comment and things. There's a real loss of accountability when you can do things remotely. Turn your camera on and off, you're not sure who they're talking to, all those sorts of things. I recognize the incredible value of Zoom, and we've all learned to Zoom and WebEx that they're great, and particularly if you have to travel long distances to get to meetings. But there certainly are types of bodies where I think the law should require either in-person meetings or a quorum to be in one location. And so I don't think we can just say, let's go with technology.
Well, I pay a 4-hour penalty every time I attend an in-person COOG meeting, and I don't think that's fair.
I understand your position, and I think there's a trade-off, and it depends on the type of the body. You know, we don't have authority to set taxes or set school curriculums and things. We're an advisory body, and the law should allow for those distinctions. And it may also be a difference as to whether it's a statewide body or a local body. But again, it's another one of those situations where I don't think we should be endorsing just a blanket rule that says we should change the law to let Zoom be the default for any agency or any entity.
If there's room for nuance, then in fact, we probably ought to consider at future meetings what kind of nuances ought to be considered.
Shoshana, do you know if anyone during the pandemic and the executive order, now the temporary law, has tracked in-person attendance, or which, I mean, I doubt it because there's God knows how many thousands around the state public bodies, but I just wasn't sure if you had heard anything about, even anecdotally, about, you know, people trying to go in person, not being able to, or what.
Well, certainly anecdotally, we've heard a number of things, some of which was reflected in kind of the longer version of this compressed item that we offered as testimony to that assembly hearing. And we spoke a lot of, I mean, I spoke a lot about it with assembly counsel and analysts while they were preparing for that hearing. But I guess we've heard, most of what we've heard is that more people are attending because they can attend using services like Zoom and WebEx and whatever platforms are in use. But we've also heard, mostly from media and from some members of the public, but I would say mostly from media, that it may be easier to attend these things virtually, but you lose something. I think sort of what David was getting at, something is lost when you are unable or when you're prevented from attending in person. And that may or may not be exacerbated by not having a quorum in person or having more members of the body than, you know, remotely virtual than in person. But I don't think anyone has tracked it simply because of the reason you say, which is that we are sort of a diaspora when it comes to these bodies. There are thousands and thousands of them, and I would say whoever is providing the feedback, providing it to me anyway, we seem to have these themes, which is generally most people don't seem to mind the virtual component of meetings and prefer it, but there are some loud voices, and with reason, that do have these sort of specific objections to it. Sorry if that's not exactly the answer to your question, but that's sort of where I got to. Sorry about that.
No, I want an honest answer is a good answer. So yeah, no, I'm wondering too, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Shoshana, but the temporary law, and I believe the EO as well, allowed for audio only. So I'm wondering if there's maybe would be a bigger difference if you required video versus audio versus in person. I don't know. I'm just thinking, but this is probably a topic for another time.
Well, you definitely, there is a lot of, we definitely heard a theme that audio without video is very, very, nobody likes that. It ruins it for so many people. You have to be able to see the person speaking. And there were some proposals in the testimony that occurred at the assembly hearing that focused a little bit, that touched on this point and said, look, you know, we have people turning their cameras off. Members of public bodies shouldn't be able to turn their cameras off, and we should be able to see them all the time. You know, I'm lucky, you know, I'm not a member of a public body, but as a courtesy, I will turn my camera on when I'm speaking. But yeah, I think that, I don't think that's going to survive. I have a feeling that that aspect, that sort of that conference call or similar service won't survive into whatever new bill. I mean, I could be, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that there was enough objection to that to make video the preferred. The next place that we had substantive edits was in Roman 4, which was the 50A section that David did a lot of work on and circulated. Happy to proceed through this in any way that anyone feels useful. If anyone has any issues with any of the modifications that David made or wants to discuss them, let's do that now.
I thought they were fine.
I agree. I like how you presented them, David. Presented them.
There are one or two typographical errors that may have resulted from me accepting all the changes, which I will clean up, but they're non-substantive. One of them is a subject-verb agreement that I think, because the sentence became short from when it was long, I'll just make those changes that are non-substantive. All right, and so that brings us to the appendices, where we didn't have any changes at all until through to the end of the document. Opening it up for other items that we didn't discuss today, but that require discussion.
I just had a couple small edits. Back on page 7, there's one. See the third.
Are you in, what section are you in, Bill?
I'm in section B.
Okay.
So let's see, 1, 2, 3. I guess the 6th paragraph down that starts with rather.
Yes.
The second line near the end, it refers to it as these bills. It's really just one bill, right? It's a combined bill. Shouldn't that be this bill?
Sure.
And then the rest of the sentence, instead of there, it should be it's twice. That makes sense?
Yes.
And then I had one other suggestion on page 9, which falls under G2.
Okay.
where it starts Senator Serino referring to a bill, but there's no reference to the bill. Can we just add the reference to the bill?
Yes.
That's it for me.
Okay. Anybody else? So may I have a motion to approve the annual report with the changes, modifications, edits that we just discussed?
Motion,
I see Vilda might make that motion,
and I'll second it.
and Joel is seconding it. Anyone object? All right, hearing no objection, the annual report with the corrections, modifications, and amendments that we've discussed today in this meeting is approved, and I will circulate it to members and submit it to the legislature and the governor on or before our deadline of December 15th, which is next week. So thank you all for that. And we can move on to the next piece of our agenda, which is public comment. And we can see whether we have anybody. Oh, go ahead, Franklin.
It seems to me as, oh, I'm sorry. I think there's old and new business on the agenda. No? Any event, what I was going to raise
There
was,
is, but it's after public comment. Would you like
oh,
to
it's
skip
after
the order?
public comment. Okay, well, we can have public comment. What I wanted to raise is the question of when we might meet again. Because before your arrival, Shoshana, the sense of the board was that we didn't want to wait until the last quarter of each year to meet. And I thought we might talk generally. That's one point. And related to that is we've been waiting now for 2 years or more to have a meeting to talk about our mission, our bylaws, our, hopefully in-person meeting in Albany or elsewhere. And I thought we ought to have that on the agenda as well. But we can take the public comment first and people can cogitate on those points.
Would you like me to identify speakers, Shoshana?
Yeah, that would be great. I think I see one.
Okay, I see one person with their hand up. We will do 3 minutes. Just a second, I want to make sure I'm paying attention. I have Michelle A, and I'm going to unmute her now.
Hi there. Thank you for the time. I also want to concur with Ms. Franklin that WebEx stinks. As a public participant, it does not work on my laptop. I've used many platforms, does not want to work at all. So it's it's not good. I concur. I know of other people that have had multiple issues with it, phoning in, laptop, so on and such forth. I'm not great with names. Someone mentioned about transcripts. There was discussion about transcripts. Another consideration really should be disability. Transcripts need to be available for people who can't hear. So that is a consideration I'm hearing in my county, being a grassroots coordinator. And again, hybrid meetings are really, so in-person, video, audio, transcripts for disabled, homebound. When you have people in very upstate rural areas, they don't always have internet access. So that can be a challenge. So that's appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michelle. Looking through our list of attendees, if anyone else would like to speak, if they could use the hands up feature, but other than that, let me look in chat and see if there's, I just want to sort of identify anywhere else. All right, looks like Tom Speaker would like to speak, so I'm going to unmute him now. I'll try. There we go. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, thanks. Again, this is Tom Speaker at Reinvent Albany. I just want to say that we appreciate a lot of the changes that have been made over the course of the meetings, and that we agree with the vast majority of what's in there. In particular, the changes that have been made in the most recent draft that was posted regarding 50A and unsubstantiated complaints. We think that it's really important that COOG just reiterated their support for greater transparency from police departments, and just noted in that most recent draft that blocking unsubstantiated complaints could be a real problem for transparency. So thanks a lot. That's all.
Thank you, Tom. I don't see anyone else with their hand up in the attendee list, so I think we're done with that portion.
All right. So Franklin, you're on for other and new business.
Well, I don't have much new to say to what I said before, but I just thought we ought to talk about whether we can meet in the first quarter of this year, failing that the second quarter. And I know we run into problems for people who have to work on the budget, fitting us in that time. But I think it's important. We've put this off, as I said, for 2 years, to have a meeting to talk about our, what we want to be, what rules we want to have govern us. And then I would add just separately from that reason, I think it's important for us to be informed of issues throughout the year, and waiting a long time for a meeting does not bode well for that. So what do you all think, especially those of you all who are busy with the budget right at the beginning of the year? Joel.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say, for the division, it's very difficult in January and March. It's almost impossible, really. But in February, I can usually squeeze some time in while the legislature is holding their hearings, so that's usually possible. And then, by the second week of April, I should be able to squeeze some time too. So I can definitely meet in February. At least I'm pretty sure, if that's preferable for everybody. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
We had planned a meeting in person, I think March or April of, now I have my years totally confused, when you arrived.
April 2020. April 2020.
To greet Shoshana and to talk about the committee. And it'd be nice to have a meeting in person, God willing.
We managed to get one in this year, I think. Or was it? We got one, two in.
But that was sort of hybrid in person. I mean, the idea was that we would all gather in Albany. I'd be happier if it were New York City, but in Albany, and look each other, face to face and talk.
We should all go to Steven's house so he doesn't have to drive.
That's right. We'll go to Oneida or Utica. We would be supportive of meeting throughout the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in 2020, we did have that plan, and then we got a little derailed. We did meet in June, which was earlier than the committee had ever met in the 14 years of looking at minutes that I did.
It was earlier, but it was later than we had expressed an interest in meeting, and it didn't come from me. I can tell you who in our group had suggested that we start meeting much more often. Do we want to aim for February, or is that a terrible time for those of us who have to car and train to Albany?
Plan for it, and then if the weather turns out to not be that great, I guess we could look at it then. But I would just ask that we avoid President's Week, because school's out that week, so it's an extra challenge for us.
Well, let's see if we can find a time in February to meet in person in Albany with as many people as can do it, and we'll hook up with the infernal WebEx for those who can't.
And we would, it might, Franklin, to nail down a specific day, we might need to wait until the legislature posts the hearing dates, simply because one or two of the agencies might be actually preparing their commissioner for testimony. I don't know how much involvement Bill and Bill have, and I don't, you know, obviously Joel, but we might lose one or two of them if we pick badly. So I will we can try to avoid that by, you know, I'll send it. We'll make sure we'll poll people for availability in February, and we'll cross our fingers and we'll try to refine it as the date gets closer. And maybe refine an agenda as well, circulate something for people to think about, and then we can add to it as needed as we get closer to the big event.
Okay.
Any other business? Well, happy holidays and happy New Year, everybody. You'll be hearing from me shortly on a couple fronts. One would be, you know, to collect availability or potential availability in February. The other will be to circulate to you the final version of the report, and I'll obviously put that. We'll send that to the legislature and the governor as we ordinarily do before December 15th. So, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Shoshana,
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm a little slow here, but I'm sort of sinking in on me about this meeting. One thing that might be useful if we really want to do kind of a planning, overarching, who are we, what is our, have a small group prepare materials and an agenda, like a planning committee of 2 or 3 people, if anyone was willing to volunteer to do that. I think it would make the meeting, working with you and Candace, but I think that might make the meeting more productive.
Sure.
I
You
agree with
volunteering
that.
then?
And I also think we were interested in seeing, but and to the extent that we're still considering having some rules to apply to our meeting, whatever you call them, we were interested in seeing what other organizations had in the way of rules, because there were some key things missing. I think Vilda came up with there being no provision for how to amend the rules. I've forgotten, but it was something really basic that was missing from the bylaws. So it might be nice to look at some other bylaws. I know there are not a lot of organizations like us, but if the staff could take a look, or if any of us know.
We have collected it. We have collected those data.
Okay,
So
why don't you share
circulate them.
some of those models with us so that we have that to consider too?
Sure, we'll send them around. I think we were going to tee it up when we were prepared to have this, so this is a good time for that, obviously. So does anyone volunteer for David's planning committee?
I do.
David, Bill, Franklin. All right. Well, that sounds like it's 1/3. It's a good committee size, right?
Feel outnumbered already.
All right. Well, the minutes will reflect that. And then we'll sort of, you know, look to coordinate with you guys as we approach that time.
Okay.
Any, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, we're adjourned at 1:43.
Happy holidays.
Happy
everyone.
holidays, everybody.
All right.
Happy New Year.
Thanks.
Bye.